Hi, everybody. I am Kate Pollan, a coach, writer, and a deeply curious human, and this is Hello Void. This series is a collection of unscripted conversations at the intersection of psyche and uncertainty in 2025. I'm sitting down with coaches, creatives, healers, thinkers, feelers, anyone who wants to talk to me about what it actually means to be human right now, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of this at a time when the world feels just very chaotic and contradictory and wired for overwhelm. So, we're talking about how people make sense of their inner lives, how they're learning to live alongside emotional pain and uncertainty, and also what they've noticed in the people that they work with. Because being human, it is not a solo experience, it's relational. It's bittersweet, right? It's joy and grief, expansion and fear, doubt and wonder, all of these things sitting side by side. So today I am talking with Lawrence Gold. And to start us out, Lawrence, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and why you said yes to talking with me today.
Okay, well, I'm one of those deeply curious individuals. I've been through many courses of training and study, and what I've arrived at is an understanding of the underpinnings of all of them. They all have this in common, and those underpinnings are also what underlies being human at every stage of human development.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to start with the first question of how has your understanding of what it means to be human changed in the past few years, emotionally, spiritually, whatever comes to you?
Okay. Well, one thing about it is that people right now are facing tumultuous times. And historically, the way we faced tumultuous times has been as a group, as a tribe, as a family, as a community. And
Mhm.
those have all gotten pretty well busted up in these times. So people are largely feeling at sea and on their own, even if they have a support group. The intimacy of those groups is crippled by the same factors that have crippled community in our times: the isolation, the chaotic developments, the acceleration of change, which all lead to one common characteristic experience. Guess
What is
what it
that?
is? Stress.
Ah, stress.
You remember stress. I had some earlier.
Yes, unfortunately, I do remember stress. Yes.
Now, here's the discovery that I made in my integration of the different disciplines in which I've been trained. Every one of them involves four core faculties or muscles of intelligence.
Okay.
And those are attention, intention,
Okay.
memory, and imagination.
Excellent. How do those all fit together?
They exactly fit together. You can't have an experience of attention without an intention to pay attention.
That is
Moreover,
true.
and we don't know what we're paying attention to unless we remember, and our ability to receive impressions requires the ability to see the relationship between what's happening and what we remember, which is imagination and memory. All four work together and only work together, but not necessarily evenly. Now, what I discovered happens when they're not evenly developed is
Stress.
stress, right? It's like driving a car with a flat tire.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
the one tire's flat and the rest aren't. Yeah, they
Yeah, and
can't go evenly.
you got a bumpy ride, and you can't really get going. And this is the common experience of human beings in this time. It is, in fact, the most common universal experience of human beings in this time is the unevenness of development. So people feel trapped in circumstances and try to get out of that by changing the circumstances.
Mhm.
Doesn't work so well,
Yeah, like when
right?
somebody's unhappy where they live, and so they're like, I'll move to a new city, and then everything is going to be miraculously fixed.
Good luck,
Yes. Yes.
right? So that's doing it the hard way. And the success rate of that is visible in our times today. The stress levels are, let's say, a little elevated, right? People are living in a sea of stress, amplified by the news media who emphasize sensationalism.
Hmm.
It doesn't calm people down. How often are people calmed down by the news,
Yes.
right? Entertainment media. If we look at the entertainment media, I was looking at that this morning. How many offerings on video are sinister? They're about crime, about aberrated individuals that they think are deserving of being an example. It's generally an adverse environment, it's a hostile environment.
Hmm.
And so people are feeling stressed out. And the one thing that can be done instead of trying to change circumstances is change our own programming.
Yep. Turn inwards.
And it's not necessary to go loony every time a stressor comes up. It may be common, it may be frequent, but it's not inevitable. But it depends upon how balanced our four core muscles of intelligence are.
It makes sense. And like any other muscle, right, we have to regularly work them out. We regularly grow them and pay attention to them and care for them.
Right. And what's the marker of, say, an elite athlete? It isn't big bulging muscles. No, it's coordination,
Yes.
right? Now, how do we coordinate? People don't, they say, oh, I'm just uncoordinated. Well, that may be the present case, but it doesn't mean that it necessarily has to stay that way. People can
So true.
develop coordination, learning to dance, learning to ride a bicycle,
Hmm.
learning to write with a pen,
Yep.
learning to type on a keyboard. All these things are learned forms of coordination.
Yep.
The four core muscles of intelligence, generally uncoordinated in individuals, can be coordinated. They can be brought
Absolutely.
to a higher level. And when that happens, as soon as it happens, stress level goes right down. And the availability of the happy hormone, which one is that?
Oh, dopamine.
Yay! So that becomes much more available to us.
Absolutely.
So, what is it to be human? Well, it seems to be right now to be living in a sea of stress and trying to keep our nose above the overwhelm waterline.
And it doesn't always seem to be in our favor right now. I think there's some people who benefit from keeping us in overwhelm.
Yeah,
So, how do you personally like make space for pain or uncertainty when it shows up?
I feel it.
Perfect.
I don't avoid it. For me, it's interesting. Didn't always used to be that way, but as I developed the technology based on the four core muscles of intelligence, and I started getting balanced and cleaned up. Every time something adverse would arise, I got really interested
Oh,
because I
yeah.
could now run it through the relevant procedure based on the four core muscles of intelligence. So that's how I handle it.
I think that getting curious is quite underrated when it comes to any of these quote unquote bad emotions.
And for most of us, impossible. And I try to get interested as I forcing ourselves to get interested, add more stress on top of the stress.
I think that often happens too when people kind of confuse getting curious with judging what's happening in that moment.
Yeah, I think the judging probably uh, is louder than the
Absolutely.
curiosity.
Yes.
Curiosity is a kind of idealism in that case.
Yes.
I don't like this, but I'm going to make myself be curious because I read or heard. That's a
Like,
better, well,
I
that,
think I
that good,
should.
right. I said, good luck with that one. As long as the core muscles of intelligence are out of balance with each other, that's an uphill battle.
Absolutely. Well, you had mentioned that it wasn't always this way for you, like getting curious. Talk to me about that journey. Like, what was it like for you to start to get curious?
Well, I'll just start with childhood and be concise at each of the stages. Okay. Okay. I was very curious as a child. My parents got me a copy of the World Book Encyclopedia, and I read it cover to cover, every volume, and the yearbooks.
Love it.
And I studied other matters. I studied anatomy, paleontology, astronomy. I had science kits. So I was very curious, but I wasn't socialized because my situation removed me from my social set. So I never got that socialization. In my teen years, I was a participant in what were called encounter groups, an outgrowth of the human potential movement. And I felt like a fish out of water. I wasn't accepted because I was too different, not having been socialized. People faulted me for being intellectually astute and developed. There was a video I saw that, why do people hate intelligent people? Oh, okay. So I got through all of that. So I went from studying the external world in childhood to the internal world. I took up yoga. I did chakra meditations. I took up meditation. I studied the Tibetan yoga and secret doctrines. After that, there were a series of trainings for
Mhm.
me. Uh, I did the EST training, which is now called the Forum. And I participated in the human potential movement in different ways, but I was still way out of balance. Okay. It was at a certain point that I caught wind of the fact that there are four core muscles of intelligence. And when I experimented with those, I started feeling like myself. I started feeling calm, cool, and collected, capable, right? And whereas I had been very timid around people because I was so different from everybody else, I started to get my balance. And the more I did that, I went down that rabbit hole of development and I discovered a whole bunches of things that changed me. That was self-fueling.
Mhm.
The changes fed my interest, and my interest fed the changes. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely.
All right.
So what I'm also hearing from this, and
Yeah.
please correct me if I am wrong, but what I'm hearing from this is that you did a lot of study, both internally and externally, and you were able to use that to turn it into tools that you've created to help other people do these things, perhaps at a faster pace.
Much faster. This is the easy way because we're working at the core level. We're working with the foundation instead of with the effects.
Perfect. Address the condition, not the symptom.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you developed with that?
Okay. Well, I was called out west to work with a client who was in a lot of pain. My clinical work that I was trained in deals with stress related disorders, including chronic pain. It's called HANA somatic education.
Okay.
And as I worked with her, I kept getting the sense that she wasn't changing as quickly and as easily as I expected. And I suspected that her stress was using up her attention, so she couldn't invest herself in the procedures as easily. And I got curious during a break in our work, what is it that keeps a person stuck? And I thought, well, the first thing is got to identify what they're stuck or I'm stuck in.
Awareness is always the first step. Yep.
It's awfully handy. And I followed a trail of breadcrumbs in which I identified certain things that were characteristic. Like whenever a person is under stress, there's an intention that they have that's being blocked or thrown out of balance. There's the belief that that's all true
hmm
and they've really got to do something. And their memories were contributing to all of that. And that would lead to imaginings of things that were fearsome to them.
Yeah,
So
the stories they start to tell themselves and everything. Yep.
right. So I used it with her after the break in its crudest brand new form, and it worked. She mellowed out, she eased up, and I got I started using it in myself. And the more I used it in myself, the more it showed me its ins and outs. And
That's
this is
beautiful.
what became the gold key release. And it by using it, it taught itself to me. And then I began using it with other clients who started seeing similar stuckness. It was
That's
a quick way
beautiful.
of dispelling stress by working with the underpinnings. Then, as I inspected the gold key release, I saw that the four core muscles of intelligence were present in the gold key release that I had developed organically, and looked at it and then found, by George, look at that. The four faculties, the four core muscles are present in it, and it works.
How has this process for you changed? Because you were talking about doing it with your first client in the very rudimentary way. Like, how has it changed over the years since?
Deeper, faster, a better tool.
That makes sense.
And it's easy. I mean, it's how shall I put it? This way I've been saying it. When a person gets into it, they realize that the steps are as familiar to them as milk and cookies.
It's like riding a bicycle.
Easier.
Well, I think that leads us into you have a gift for listeners today.
Right. It's the Gold Key Release, a guided instruction recording around the topic, what to do. A lot of people are wondering what to do in these times, aren't they?
I mean, I was wondering that myself this morning. So,
Yeah. Now, here's the thing with what to do, the problem that people face is they start filtering, screening their ideas of what to do based on what they think they know, what they think is true.
mhm,
See, well, this is a big problem because that can screen out all kinds of things that are outside the box for them that are exactly what they need, but haven't occurred to them or they've been dismissed for one reason or another. So
mhm.
running what to do cleans that up so that the person's perception what to do is free attention. It's not biased or twisted. It's straightened out and made much easier. So it opens the superhighway of intelligence and it gives a person a feeling that, hey, that's a good idea that it would either didn't occur to them or they had dismissed prematurely. So the
Yeah.
gold key release for the topic, what to do.
And how do listeners go about accessing this?
Well, there'll be a link. I'm not sure that I'll provide to you. I'm not sure uh, how to get the link to people. It seems like that would be the way to do
Yeah,
it.
send the link to me and I will make sure it gets in the show notes.
Mm-hmm. And it's a download,
Okay.
and just follow the instructions.
It's an audio track.
It's audio track. Uh, there's a video track to it, but the video is synonymous or like what's happening in the audio track. I
Okay.
can't I can't explain that. You have to see it.
So, do listeners need to watch it as well as listen to it, or is it something that you can also listen to?
It's good listening only.
Okay, perfect. Give people kind of the option of whether or not they're in front of a screen or not when they're listening.
Yeah.
I love
The
that.
visual is just an added dimension of it, but it's not central. When I first developed the Gold Key release, there were no videos. It was person to person. And I am not the proper object of interest or attention when running a Gold Key release.
Yeah.
The person's own inner life is their proper object of attention. That's where the rubber meets the road.
One of the things that I like to say is that when we're unhappy with something in the external world, that we can take a look in our internal world. So it makes sense to me that in context of this recording of this process and everything, that you'd
Mm-hmm.
want the focus to be for the person listening to focus on themselves and what's going on inside their own inner world.
Right. And there's no analysis. In fact,
Yes.
during the process, there's nothing they need to remember. The process makes it happen then and there. And it's a way of eliminating stress with nothing else having to change first. It
I love it.
opens the channel of imagination so that outside the box workable ideas come in that feels like a good idea.
I love it. Now tell me here, we are nearing the end, and I want to know, what do you do with people? Like if you were to tell the audience the kind of services that you have available to help them with, what would you say?
Okay. Well, my intention is to get this mind technology out into the world and spreading grassroots so that people can teach it to their kids, or coaches can teach it to their athletes,
Excellent.
or politicians can use it to clean up the subterfuges that beset politics. And so the published recordings are the way it can be exploded out into the world as a meme to people.
Beautiful.
I also do one-on-one consultations, and we find out what the person's issue is. And hint, hint, the issue is, does it bother you? Would you like to be released from it without having to struggle with the circumstances? That's the one to do.
Beautiful. So I'm hearing that people can both work with you one-on-one to have this process done for themselves, and people who are interested in learning how to do it for themselves and others can come to you for that training.
Exactly.
Beautiful. And how would people find you to do that?
You can find me through the recording of the Gold Key release.
Perfect. I will make sure all of the information that people would need for that as well will be in the show notes.
Okay, very good. Oh, well, in the show notes, you can put my uh, contact
Yep,
information online.
I will do that. Absolutely. Well, Lawrence, thank you so much for being here and sharing your perspective with me, with listeners. If you were to leave listeners with one last thought, what would that be?
Stop thinking.
That is very hard for some of us to do, and also very necessary.
A few seconds at a time is sufficient, done many times.
That's true. I When I meditate, I know that at first I thought that the goal was to not have any thoughts. And I have now realized that the goal isn't necessarily to not have any thoughts because we're human. It's more to be aware when that's happening so we can choose something else to engage with.
I see it as even simpler than that. When we have a thought, notice the feeling of it. Switch from the content of the thinking to the feeling.
What it's
That's,
like in your body.
yeah,
Also, something I'm learning to do as a recovering intellectualizer.
I hear you.
Well, I was also thinking earlier, you're talking about like reading the encyclopedia. I very strongly remember reading the dictionary and sometimes copying the dictionary into paper for no reason other than it was interesting to me and it was something to do. So
Mhm.
I'm also that way. I read all of those things. I'm very, it's just interesting to me. And also probably why I'm such a good speller now, quite frankly. All right, well, excellent. So, thanks again for coming on. And for anybody listening, if you want to connect with me or find out more about my coaching services, you can find me at followthedopamine.life, on Instagram at followthedopamine.life, and on Substack at followthedopamine. Again, I will include all of those links in the show notes. And if this conversation sparks something in you and you want to explore what it means to be human with me on all of its bittersweet mess and beauty, I'd love to hear from you. So until next time, thanks for being here. Thanks for talking with me, Lawrence. And to all, thanks for being you. Bye, everybody. Sorry, apparently I'm deciding to leave